We've got a problem with how these races are getting settled. The FIA just meddles around with these results time after time, and you never know who really wins a race now, do you? This is Turn One. We're your host,
And
Thomas.
Jeremiah.
We're going to be talking a little bit about this year's Belgian Grand Prix. We're heading into the Formula One summer break, so we've got a little bit of time on our hands. We're going to look back at this race. We're not going to do a full race recap, but we have a bigger topic to get into, which is just post-race results changes. I think we've seen that at least 3 times this year where the results are changing post-race. We saw it one time last year really affect the outcome of a race. And so I just thought, let's have an open discussion about, is this the right way to conduct the post-race technical, investigation that they do, or should they do something else? But let's go back to last weekend when we had the Belgian Grand Prix. Jeremiah, you thought this was a barn burner, just one of the best races of the year. Walk me through your
barn
thoughts.
Burner? No, this race was insanely boring. There was barely any passing at all. Pretty much where you started is where you finished. I mean, it was Monaco-esque, I guess, except it's not that you couldn't pass. Like, it's not that there wasn't room to pass. It's just that the way that Spa is set up is basically once you get going, when you get up behind another car and you're getting in their wind, it's very difficult to have any kind of momentum build up whatsoever. So that's why you started to hear radio calls like Oscar Piastri was talking about how up in front, having that free air or open air, whatever it's called, he's like, it's king. In other words, like when you had nobody around you or when you were trying to catch up to somebody, you could make some headway. You could really get on the back of somebody. But once you got there, there was no going anywhere. I mean, we saw that at the end where George Russell had 0 tires and Lewis Hamilton could not get around him.
It was a tire strategy battle from the start. They said maybe this is a 1-stop race for some teams, maybe a 2-stop, maybe a 3-stop for some teams, depending on which compounds they want to run. I don't think anybody used the softs. I could be wrong, but it was a medium and hard day for most of the teams. And so you had Checo, of course, below his, starting in second place as he drops down to 7th. That wasn't too surprising. You had George, of course, work his way up from 6th to being the race leader, with Lewis right behind, followed by Oscar and Leclerc. Max, of course, comes up from his 11th place penalty spot to his 5th place spot where he finished the race, but that's not where his points finish is. And so, yeah, it was a tire strategy battle. And, as we're going through the race on about lap 30, it's pretty clear from George's radio messages that he's not stopping again. He's doing a 1-stopper.
Yep.
Lewis is going to do a 2-stopper. The vast majority of drivers did 2 stops. I think I just had this pulled up. Let's see. You had 4 other drivers do 1-stoppers plus Zhou Guanyu, who just DNF'd on lap 5. So that doesn't really count. So in total, out of the 20 drivers, you had 5 do 1-stop strategies. So a quarter of the field. And George is the only one. Sorry, there's only 2 in the top 10, Alonso and George Russell. So that makes sense. But the race comes around. We're going into lap 44 or whatever because Belgium is such a huge track. George is on pole. He's ripping through the corners. Lewis isn't making up any ground on him. Oscar's not making up any ground. Charles is not even making up ground on the top 2 or 3 at that point. And they finish the race, and George wins. Walk me through his celebration.
Man, was he excited! So, he got on the radio, and he was all like, "Yeah, yeah!" And then like going through the back way, George on the pits. So you go in the opposite direction, which is very odd, but it's because they don't want them to go all the way around this track again. So he goes in the wrong way into the pits. He's going all the way down. He's celebrating hard, brings the car to a stop, jumps out, goes sprinting in his classic George Russell run, which is, weird looking, but it's fine. Runs over to the guys in the Mercedes gear, just waiting for him, leaps into their arms. They're sitting there patting him on the back, giving him all kinds of goodness. Walks over there, shakes Lewis Hamilton's hand, and, well, he did the interview. Very exciting interview. Clearly, he was lit up about the fact that he was able to make those tires last the whole time. Total Wolf was calling him the tire whisperer. I mean, he was getting his props. Goes out into the onto the podium, massive celebration, spraying the champagne, just really living it up because this is what his third win.
Yeah, something like
It's
that.
his third win, I believe. And
Yep.
then we get
Would
to
have
the
been his
end of
third.
the race, the end of the broadcast. The broadcast ends, and as we know it, the race is George Russell, Lewis Hamilton, Oscar Piastri, Mercedes go 1-2. Well, then it comes out a little bit later.
Well, hang on. I watched the entire post-race show, a 45-minute program after the race.
Yeah.
Nothing
Yeah,
changed.
no, they did the post-race interviews with the drivers, and the guys are sitting there talking. If you watch the post-race show with on F1 TV
Buxton.
with Buxton and that whole crew, they go through their entire spiel talking about the race. All that ends, and then we find out George Russell gets penalized. I'm sorry, disqualified for being 1.5 kilograms underweight.
I found out on TikTok.
I found out on
I
Instagram.
was It was like 3 or 4 hours after the race. I'm going through TikTok and I see an account just post the little stewards FIA bulletin or statement, whatever, and it said, car 63 was under investigation for weight, and we've decided they've been disqualified. And I thought it was fake. I thought it was made up. I was like, no way. So I open up the old X or Twitter and do a quick George. I go to the search page and George Russell's trending, and I'm like, uh-oh. It's either because he won or because he lost. And sure enough, from the FIA right there and from ESPN F1 and every site, it's the official stewards report that, yeah, like Jeremiah said, he's underweight. So the details of it are that the F1 car, when it's weighed post race, one, they are supposed to drain the fuel because you have to have enough fuel in the car to provide, I think, a liter sample or something like that to the steward so that they can test that. And then the car that's left has to weigh 798 kilograms. His car was weighed immediately after the race, and it weighed 798 kilograms. Exactly.
Wow, that's a little suspicious.
And there's actually two stewards report. There's the official on the track in the pit area that does the initial weigh-ins. In his report to the steward said, I'm going to send car 63 for more inspection because he's right at weight. Come to find out, there was some gas left in that car that was not drained as per the proper procedure. After they drain that out, it equates to 1.5 kilograms, putting him at 20 or 796 and a half in terms of kilograms, 1.5 under. Can we go down a little rabbit hole here?
I do want to add real quick that Toto did come on in an interview and state that he apologized and said, I guess we just got the setup wrong on the car, which, I guess they do add weights to the car so that they can meet certain specs and stuff like that. But I feel like if you're a team that's been in the sport long enough and you're this far into the season, maybe don't mess up the weight of the car. But I'm interested to hear what your rabbit hole is.
I'm really glad you brought that up because that actually adds to my case. I think Mercedes just tried to deliberately cheat. I really do. And hear me out. Why didn't you follow the proper procedure for draining the car all the way? That's the big kicker. You still should have drained all the gas. They knew it would be underweight if they drained all the fuel. They had to have known that. Otherwise, how would they have hit the 798 on the dot? I don't know if they have a scale in their garage. I don't know if they have calculations they can do based on how they probably have calculations knowing how much fuel's in that thing that they know how much it weighs. But why didn't you just, if you got the car set up wrong, you still would have drained all the fuel and submitted it for weight just like normal. It's the fact that you left fuel in there knowing it had to meet weight. The other kicker that I've seen a lot of people bring up on YouTube, on TikTok, on whatever is, he didn't get the lap around the track to pick up rubber. So if you're not as familiar with F1, there is strategy that happens after these races. The race doesn't end and the strategy's over. The drivers are instructed. It's not over the radio. It's a known thing in racing. to go pick up some marbles. And the marbles are the little pieces of rubber that have come off of the tires throughout the course of the race, and they stick on the track. And you can see them. If you're watching the race, you'll see these little scattered fields of rubber on the track. The drivers drive over those, and their hot tires pick up those marbles of rubber, and it can add a lot of weight. I mean, think about holding a handful of rubber in your hand. It could be a couple of kilograms, a couple of pounds easily if you're doing that on all four tires. And so by not having that extra lap at Spa, the drivers don't get to do that. My only problem with that is there's four other drivers that didn't do that made weight.
Yeah.
He wasn't the only one that did a one stopper.
I'm going to come to Mercedes' defense just a little bit here. I think you're onto something though, and I'll touch on that afterwards. I'm going to try to present the opposing case here. What if they thought that they nailed it, and come to find out at the end of the race when they're draining the fuel and everything, one guy's sitting over there, the whole team's over there celebrating, and then one guy's over here draining the fuel, and he's the first to find out, and he's just like, uh-oh. He's like, he just reaches over and talks to the walkie-talkie. He's like, can I get some help over here? I just want to make sure that this is correct. Something doesn't seem right. They come over there, they wait, find out, oh, we got the setup wrong. This thing's coming in a little light. And then some top dude walked over, found out, what are y'all talking about? They filled him in on the situation, and he goes, all right, listen to me very carefully. Here's what we're going to do.
How much is 1.5 kilograms of gas?
I need you to drain just enough gas to where we meet the requirement, because this thing is going to be a little light. We're going to have to try and save this.
We've been celebrating for 45 minutes out there.
George Russell's not even here anymore. he went to go party. We gotta try and save this.
He's on Verstappen's private jet right now, and Max isn't even there with him.
Jeez. So then the stewards take the car, they weigh it, find out that there's some gas in there, and it's kind of accidental. It's one of those things where it's like they didn't realize that the car was going to come under until it was too late, and so they made a last-ditch effort to try and save it. That's the opposing side of things.
But that side still doesn't combat that they openly cheated.
Yeah, well, that's just me trying to...
Accidental or not, they didn't drain all the fuel. What would have been a better scenario is they still had fuel in the car, and when they drain it, he still makes weight.
Play safe.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like, that would be a real accident, is if you forget to drain all the fuel, or something messes up in your machines or your equipment, and the fuel doesn't drain all the way. You send it to weigh, and then by the time you actually do drain it, you still make weight. That probably happens a lot, right? Some weird thing happens with the car breakdown, and you've got to weigh it again. I don't know. It's the fact that it came in precisely at weight.
I'll throw in another angle, because I said I had another thought on this too. There were articles that came out that said that Mercedes is favoring George Russell over Lewis Hamilton. Now,
as they should be.
You can take that as you will, like, yeah, as they should be, or they get the proper strategy and all that. Here's the thing. George's whole going on one tire to the whole race, that was his call completely. That wasn't his strategy. Basically, whenever he brought that to them, the guys behind the pit wall were like, well, we assume that you're going to end up in fifth either way, no matter what you do. So yeah, if you think you can do better than that, go for it. And he ends up winning the whole dang thing. But he wasn't on an optimal strategy. So what I'm saying by they're favoring George is not so much giving him the optimal strategy, but maybe skirting around a couple rules. And I think they just got exposed in a big, big way, because if you notice, Lewis Hamilton's car did not come under scrutiny. And I'll bet you if they tested one Mercedes car, they immediately went and tested the other.
Absolutely. Because if not even kicked off by the FIA, another team was like, hey, I want both of those in space.
That, or when they were running their practice sessions, George Russell was coming off of some homemade chili or some lasagna or something hefty. And so when they were setting the car up and it was actual race day where he's coming in with just some soup and water and a couple crackers.
There's that guy there's that account on TikTok that does the little animations of the race, with the little driver figures and all that. You've seen those. I love that guy. Does not get enough
views.
He's great. For this race, what he did was it showed George pulling in and like celebrating, and then Fernando Alonso's walking past him, just chugging a giant thing of water. And George is like, "What are you doing, Fernando?" And he's like, "Oh, nothing, nothing. Go celebrate." He's just pounding water, trying to make weight. Yeah, I don't know. It, look, I don't want to say there's a lot of conspiracy, but there's something that happened in that race. And again, they might have just gotten it wrong, and they tried to cover. They covered it up. That
It was a
100% they
cover
tried to
up,
cover it
without
up.
a doubt.
Yeah. Now, whether or not I don't think they would have done that on purpose. Let me clarify that. I don't think they went into that race saying we're going to have him run underweight because that's how he's going to win. I think there was a genuine mistake somewhere, but they did try to cover it up. There's no getting around that. That brings us into kind of the larger discussion point, though, which is, again, this was hours after the race, at a minimum an hour after the race. I don't know exactly when it came down, but at a minimum, it was over an hour after the race had finished. You have the entire world, Formula One is still getting millions and millions of viewers across ESPN and Sky Sports and F1 TV. Everybody leaves thinking that George Russell has just won his third Grand Prix. Mercedes just had a dominant 1-2 performance in one of the grandest races of the year in Spa there in Belgium. I mean, it was a showcase. His celebration was, I thought it was a little over the top, but for your third win and in a year where it's been a little bit tough for you, okay, sure, adequate celebration, a little over the top, but whatever. And then you change the results and you pull the rug out for. And how many people right now, if you're not somebody like us, or if you're watching this video, or if you're real in tune with Formula One other than just watching the races, how many people right now know that he didn't win that race? Probably a lot.
I'll add to your point. I was texting back and forth with my brother maybe 6-7 hours after the race, and he was like, "Wow, that was a impressive race for George Russell to go that long." I texted him back and I said, "Yeah, it sucks that he got disqualified." And he goes, "George Russell got disqualified?"
Exactly.
6-7 hours after the race had concluded.
Again, there's people, we're recording this midweek at this point. We're 3 days removed from the Grand Prix, 4 days removed. I bet there's still a significant population of people that watched George Russell celebrate that win, not knowing he didn't win that race. If you didn't go immediately on Twitter, if you weren't immediately on TikTok, if your feeds on social media aren't geared towards F1, you would have no idea.
No.
And so that's where we get into these issues. I've got a couple of examples for you. So the first couple of these weren't huge points wise, but they are annoying. So Miami of this year, this was Lando's first career win. You might remember Carlos Sainz finished fourth on track. Okay, pretty good. 12 points, whatever, not a podium. Post race, after everything is settled and done, he gets knocked down to fifth place. If you're a Carlos Sainz fan, if you're a Ferrari fan, whatever, you just lost 2 points and you don't even know about it. So you go into the next race week and Carlos isn't where you think he is in the standings anymore because he got a penalty. Similar deal this year in Austria. Now, this year's Austria was not nearly as bad as last year's Austria, which I'll get to. But Nico Hülkenberg finished 14th on track and then receives a penalty later on and gets kicked out. That was in the sprint. In the race, Max Verstappen, 10-second penalty. Alex Albon, 5-second penalty. Lando Norris, his wasn't a penalty. He's just on the list.
Mm-hmm.
The big two, here we go. 2023 Austria. This one we've already done a video on. I'll link it in the description, and up above it'll pop up in the little icon thing. Here we go. We've done this now like twice, and every time it's very stressful. Carlos Sainz finished fourth, but received a 10-second penalty. Lewis Hamilton finished seventh, received a 10-second penalty. Pierre Gasly finished ninth, received a 10-second penalty. Alex Albon received a 10-second penalty. Logan Sargent received 15 seconds of penalties. Esteban Ocon finished 12th, but then received 30 seconds of penalties. Nick DeVries finished 15th, but received 5 seconds of penalties and then 10 seconds of penalties for a total of 15. Kevin Magnussen finished 19th, but received a 5-second penalty. Yuki Tsunoda finished 17th, but received 15 seconds of penalties. Goodness. Every single person changed positions after that race. And we didn't know it for 5 hours.
They had to go back and tally up all those missed turns.
Everything changed. All of it. And then you come into this year, 2024 Belgium. Again, one of the staple. If you're only going to watch, if you're a fan that only watches the playoffs of the NFL and the Super Bowl, if you're a fan that only watches, the World Series in baseball. If you're one of those fans for F1, you're watching Monaco, you're watching Spa, maybe you're watching Abu Dhabi at the end of the year just to see who takes the thing home. There's a few like staple races that are icons in Formula One. This is one of those. People tune in for Spa. This is a big deal. And you just kick the winner, not to a penalty. This isn't a 10-second penalty that kicks him down to fourth. No, it's like he didn't even race.
Which, if you watch that race and you watch the last 10 laps of this, or 8 laps, 4 laps, whatever, you saw the dramatized finish that we had here at Spa. And so now to come back and look and realize that, oh, you could have just had Lewis Hamilton and Oscar Piastri go across the line like nothing happened. It kind of takes away from all that special moment.
So here's where we can have a little bit of discussion before we wrap up. And I don't know the answer. How do you fix that? So, the easiest answer, but the least satisfying for fans would be no celebration, no podium, and no race results until you get all the inspections done, until the stewards have reviewed track limits, and until all the weigh-ins have been completed.
Yeah.
That doesn't work.
No, because then you have people sitting in the stands for 3 hours waiting to get the podium celebration.
Right. Or the TV broadcast, you log off after the race and then you've got to remember to check back in 6 hours later to get the full results. The other thing that I think would probably be more realistic, and of course I'm interested in your ideas, but just have a faster way of weighing these cars. I don't know how much money it would cost to have everybody have their own official FIA sanctioned, scale at their garage. I don't know if there's a faster way as they're coming in off the track to quickly scale them. I know there's a longer inspection than just weighing the cars. They get looked at pretty thoroughly for people to cheat, because racing pretty much universally is known for cheating. Like that's its kind of whole thing. Whether it's NASCAR, any kind of stock car racing, rally, Formula One, it's always trying to get around the rules. But I don't know. What are your thoughts? Is this just the best way? Is this the best system?
I mean, it's the best they can come up with right now. Just you have to remember right now, as it stands, they don't inspect thoroughly every single car. Yeah, they get weighed, but they only select a select few of cars at the end of the race. Like I think they take 3 cars and they do a full inspection on them to make sure everything is built to spec. So as it stands right now, that's the best that they could come up with. I think maybe if you had right now, you basically have a marshal, not a marshal, the stewardess, whatever it is, that sits there and watches every single turn from every single lap for every single driver until they find where all the problems are. I think maybe if you had some kind of AI technology watch it, and it would throw up a flag every time that it thinks that a car went across the lines. So instead of going back and watching every single turn from every single driver on every single lap, you're just going and looking at the flags. And I mean, hire more people. Besides those 2 options, I really can't think of anything for this.
I actually think they already have that detection thing that you mentioned. I remember last year they talked about how the cars were fully trackable on track and it would flag a system if they were going off. Oh. Now, my only concern with that is how accurate can it be to know when exactly all 4 tires are off the track? Well, they still have
to go back and watch it just to make sure that it's completely accurate.
But maybe like you said, it throws up a flag and they review those, I guess.
Yeah, that's
but tough. I'm just again, let us know in the comments what's the fix here, or is this just the system and we have to live with celebrating George Russell's 3rd career victory and then pulling the rug out from under him and saying, actually, your season isn't fully back on track yet. You're actually in a worse place than when you started this race.
On a more positive note, Lewis Hamilton wins his 2nd Grand Prix
of the season. Yeah. I mean, it was a decent day for Mercedes regardless, which is why I think Toto was generally fine with not being busted that much for trying to cover it up. That's why he just released the very plain, we made a mistake statement and we'll move on, because he still won the race. He's probably thinking, please don't go look at Lewis's car any closer than you already have. But I don't know. There's got to be a better way. In NASCAR, do you know what they do? I don't know how they do it in NASCAR, if they do the same deal. Do they have a pit lane celebration and a guy does burnouts in the grass and then they pull it all away?
I'm sure it might have happened. I can't think of any scenarios off the top of my head from races that I've watched where he's doing donuts in the grass and everything, and then they give him the trophy and everything just to come find out that he didn't even win. I'm sure it's happened. And I'm sure it's happened in every form of motorsport, but It's a faulty system, but I think it's one of those things where you just kind of do the best that you can, and I don't know what they can do to fix it, but it is annoying.
Okay, let us know in the comments what's your idea for how to fix these horrible post-race changes.
Guys, if you think the drivers just need to be honest and come and tell the stewards when they say that they went off and just mean it and be truthful. That's ridiculous, but it'd be funny.